Thank you for being a part of the Woodberry Village Apartments project. We will go over the subcontractor, contracting, and employment requirements for this project. Please see your project contacts. Your main point of contact for GCS Siegel will be Richard Montanier. Also, you will see listed here Atmos Solutions. If you have any compliance questions or concerns, please reach out to either individual, Kalila Woodland Adams or Mika Bowling. Let's go over the first project compliance requirement, and that will be with the Department of Small and Local Business Development. Department of Small and Local Business Development, which we will refer to as DSLBD, they are the agency that is charged with monitoring public and private projects that receive government assistance of $250,000 or more. Those projects are required to subcontract 35% of the project contract value to SBE subcontractors. SBEs stands for Small Business Enterprises. This requirement will flow down to all subcontractors on the project. We do encourage that if you have a subcontracting opportunity, you make every effort to subcontract to an SBE or CBE subcontractor. If you do subcontract to an SBE or CBE, you will need to complete the SBE subcontracting plan. Let's take a look at that plan. The first page of the SBE subcontracting plan will be pre-filled, so you will not need to complete anything on the first page. The second page of this plan is where you will enter in the information for your lower tier SBE or CBE subcontractor. Once you have completely filled in the required information for your SBE subcontractor, you will need to enter in your name, your title, your company name, and you will need to sign and date this page. The third page of the SBE subcontracting plan is to be left blank and will be completed by DSLBD. Once you have completely filled out this SBE subcontracting plan, you will return it to Atmos Solutions for submission to DSLBD. For any SBE, CBE subcontractor on this project, they will be required to provide an executed subcontract agreement. They will also have to submit a quarterly vendor verification form. The quarterly vendor verification form is the SBE, CBE subcontractor attesting to their current contract value, they're paid in the quarter, they're paid to date, and the remaining amount owed. So we're looking here at the first page of the vendor verification form. Atmos Solutions will pre-fill most of the information on the first page for each of our SBE, CBE subcontractors. At that point, our SBE, CBE subcontractor will have to verify that the information is correct, and then they will make any edits as needed. They will also have to list any lower tier subcontractors that they may have. Once the first page is determined to be completely accurate, you will go to the second page. The second page is where you will indicate the current contract value. The second line item asks you to indicate your total contract values for lower tier SBE, CBE. So if you have no lower tier SBE or CBEs, you will leave that second line item blank. If you have lower tier SBE, CBEs, you will total their contract value and put that in the second line item. The next line item you will indicate if you were paid in the quarter. The third line item is what you were paid to date, and lastly, remaining amount owed. Once that is complete and it's accurate, you will then have this form signed and notarized. Once it's been notarized and completely filled out, you will submit it to Atmos Solutions. DSLBD does encourage outreach activities. In order to satisfy those outreach activities, you would need to identify subcontracting opportunities for SBEs. You will have to provide copies of written solicitations that you did use to solicit SBE subcontractors. Also, if you did solicit SBE subcontractors, please retain that information so that it can be used to support your outreach activities. The next project requirement that we will review is the Department of Employment Services, DOES. DOES monitors the First Source Employment Agreement, and for this project, that will be the 51% district resident new hires requirement. DOES will also be your first source for recruiting new DC resident hires. The First Source Employment Agreement will need to be completed by subcontractors that have a contract value of $300,000 or more. Your First Source Employment Agreement should be completed 7 days prior to your company starting work on this project. And lastly, again, this project is held to the 51% DC new hires requirement, which would be put in perspective. Your first 2 hires out of 3 should be DC residents. If you do not have a need to hire, then that is not a problem. Just make sure that you work only your current staff. If you happen to hire at a later date, then please do not have your new hire work at this project unless they are a DC resident. Lastly, again, DOES is your first source for employment recruiting. We encourage every subcontractor to list all positions on the DOES's Job Bank Services website, which is DC Networks. If you do not have an account with the Job Bank, please call the number you see listed here, and they will get you registered so that you can list all of your employment positions on this website. This will serve as a good faith effort to hire DC residents. A part of your First Source Employment Agreement will be the Revised Employment Plan. It will come to you as a separate agreement. You will have to complete the projections, answer all questions listed. If it is asking for you to list your whole workforce, please list all your workforce if they are laid off, if they are apprentices, if they may get transferred in from a different project. If you list all of your workforce, this will keep DOES from thinking that an individual may be a new hire when they were just simply laid off or transferred from a different project. And again, always, you have to post any open positions with DOES for 5 days prior to advertising elsewhere to locate a DC resident new hire. So again, please set your company up with the Job Bank Services and list your positions on that website. DOES does monitor these DC resident new hire efforts. They also monitor the apprentice requirements. They monitor it by the monthly reporting submission in the DOES 4 system. So your company will be required to submit a monthly report in the 4 system. There could be penalties assessed if you were to breach your FSEA agreement, or if you did not meet the 51% DC new hires requirements. And you'll see listed here the penalties. Now, the DC Apprenticeship Council has a requirement that is a part of the First Source Employment Agreement. So for every subcontractor that has a contract value over $500,000 or cumulative contract values in the District of Columbia over $500,000, you are required to have an apprenticeship program. If you do not have an apprenticeship program, please reach out to Atmos Solutions and we will assist you with starting that process with the DC Apprenticeship Council to register and implement a program. Also, for this project, you will be required to have 35% of your apprentice hours worked by DC apprentices. A part of this requirement is that you must satisfy the journeyman to apprenticeship ratio, and that is a 3-to-1 ratio. So if you have 3 journeymen performing on site, you must have at least 1 apprentice. It cannot be a flip scenario. You cannot have apprentice on site and not have journeyman. You cannot have 3 apprentices and only 1 journeyman. You must satisfy the Apprenticeship Council's apprentice ratio, which will be 3 journeymen to 1 apprentice. If you have only 1 journeyman performing on site, then you are not expected to have an apprentice. The last requirement that we will look at for this project is through the Office of Contracting and Procurement. That's OCP. That project requirement will be the DC living wage rate. Effective July 1st, 2020, the DC living wage rate is $15 per hour. So you will need to make sure that all employees are not paid less than $15 per hour for their rate. Thank you for watching the Woodberry Project Contracting and Employment Compliance Training. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Atmos Solutions. Again, thank you.